Hello, this is Mason Satterfield, and we'll be going over wireless security setup. Basically, what I'm going to try and get you is to understand how Wi-Fi works and what goes into getting Wi-Fi secure. So, moving on here, let's look. What is Wi-Fi? Well, Wi-Fi is actually just radio station frequency channels. So, if you look at it as like something like 101.5 or 98.3, all those kind of radio station frequency channels, it's just like that, but it has its own frequency, and that is there's two main ones at this point in time, and that is the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz. Now, how does it work? What it does is there is a device or a router that connects to your modem, or it's a modem router combo, and what it does, that router will send out those frequency channels with data to your devices, and those devices will pick that up and then communicate back to it. Now, why do we need to know how Wi-Fi works? Well, let's say you have an intruder on your network and your internet seems to be running slow. If you used your router and looked into its Wi-Fi list, you can actually see all the devices that are connected, and you can tell what that device is. You will have its MAC address and know what it's doing on your network. 2.4 gigahertz versus 5 gigahertz. The main difference between these two is the speed and distance. So the 2.4 gigahertz one has a little bit slower speed compared to the 5G one, but however, the 2.4 gigahertz has a farther range compared to the 5 gigahertz. Now, there's not an exact range, it's a roundabout range just because stuff like materials, the size of your house, all those kinds of things can actually cause interference. Even other Wi-Fi networks can cause interference. Channels. So, as I was saying about those frequency channels, 2.4 gigahertz has three non-overlapping channels. So what does that mean? So inside that 2.4 gigahertz, there is 11 channels, but the three non-overlapping ones, meaning the ones that won't cause any digital disruption, is 1, 6, and 11. Now, what I mean by digital disruption, if someone's on channel 11 per se, and you are getting slow Wi-Fi speeds because you're at an apartment, if you change it over to say 1, well, let's say there's also someone else on 1. Well, then we'll go to 6 like this guy. And that means that between those two non-overlapping channels, you are actually in this 6 still getting the best Wi-Fi you can from this device compared to the Wi-Fis around you. Now, the best Wi-Fi to use if you're in a high populated Wi-Fi area like an apartment, you'd want to use the 5 gigahertz. Now, like I did say, it is a short range, which I usually recommend devices in the same room as that router or modem router to connect to the 5G. But the 5G has 24 non-overlapping channels, so there's a there's about no chance that you're going to have someone on the same channel as you, so you should always be getting the fastest Wi-Fi through there. Moving on here. Now, what is the difference between these three things? So, first, let's do a definition of a modem. A modem basically will change a phone line internet connection to a working data internet connection. Now, for a modem router combo, that is just one device, and that after that modem changes that phone line internet to a data internet, it'll then send it in its process to the router, and that router then will send that internet through those frequency channels that I was talking about. Now, a router just by itself will just do that on its own. So the reason I brought this up is when looking at creating a network, you usually want to stay away from these modem router combos. They are not the best. They usually cause a lot of bottlenecks. Usually you want to have a modem, and then you can connect it with an Ethernet cord to a router. And what this will do is your router will then talk to all your smart devices and get all the information that it wants, and then it'll send that information over to the modem, and the modem will then change that data internet to a phone line internet and send it over to your ISP. So that causes it so it's not a lot of bottleneck. And then also, when you buy a router, usually it's going to be set up for your house. It's going to look at your square footage. You're going to see what kind of specifications it has. All those kinds of things help with making sure that your Wi-Fi is at the best possible standing. Wireless list. Now, you can access your wireless list in many different ways. Some devices have apps. Some have all devices, if they don't have an app, will have this private IP address, which is a 192.168.0.1. What that means is if you type that in, it'll take you to your modem or router combo's main address there, and then it'll prompt you to enter in the username and password. Now, the username, if you haven't, or the username and password, if you haven't already set this stuff up, it'll come default as admin and password. Now, once you sign in, some devices do require you by safety to change that password so that you're not going to get hacked by someone else if they join your internet, and they'd be able to change a bunch of things and basically make it their own internet if they got into this address. Now, taking a closer look at this client list, so we see here we have a 192.168.0.2, so this is the next device in line here. And this is I already looked this one up, this is a security camera. The way you look this up, you can look up this name. If it has a name, sometimes they actually say unknown. So if it says unknown, then you can actually look up this MAC address. These first 6 hexadecimals will get you the manufacturer, and that'll tell you a roundabout of what this device may be. Now, as you can see, the type has an Ethernet type, so this one's actually not using Wi-Fi. And then this also specifies the expiration of the DHCP. Now, let's move on to one that's actually wireless. So this is probably an Amazon Stick or a Fire TV. Either way, we don't know. We just know it's an Amazon device based on this. And also, if you look up this MAC address, you'll also see it says Amazon. Now, this type you can see is actually using wireless 2.4 gigahertz, and they name it by the 24. If there was a 5G one, it'd say wireless 5. Network name and password. So when you first sign in, usually it prompts you with these kind of settings. So what we have here for the network name is Chris, and then for the 5G we actually have Chris-5G. So when you're connecting to the Wi-Fi in the air, these are actually 2 different Wi-Fis. So in order to show the difference, we usually always put a -5G. Now, this pre-shared key or your password, this can be different or it can be the same, whichever you like, but for this consumer's point, this is actually kind of a weak password. It's only 8 characters long, has a name and then a year, which is probably gonna be hacked in about 2 hours if someone was trying. So make sure that you're using a secure password or a strong password so that you don't run into problems like this. Private IP address versus WLAN IP address. So as I was speaking before, that address is what you're going to want to go to sign in and get these settings. Now, your ISP can also help you set some of these things up because it is kind of their job, but like I said, you can always do this from a consumer, making sure you know what's going on in your network. So just wanted to show you what it looks like if you were on an ISP, if you were a technical support agent. So this is the Class A private IP address for our ISP, and there'll be a ton of different numbers after this 10 dot. And it'll give every different device. I actually just looked up a random IP address in my search bar, and I actually got this person's stuff. But for ISPs, you need a technician, that's your username, and then a password is actually something that changes every day. So they always make sure that that stuff is secured on their side as well. Security types. So looking at security types here, basically you want to know how you're going to use your Wi-Fi. If you're going to use your Wi-Fi for home or consumer use, then you want to stick to the WPA2 or WPA Personal. If you're going to set up a business, then you probably want to use the WPA2 Enterprise. Now, what does that mean? The WPA2 Enterprise actually has its own server that'll have credentials. Now, those credentials are just like a good example of this is the University of Toledo's Wi-Fi. So if you were to try and join it, you click on EDU, and once you click on that, it'll ask you to enter in a username and password. Now, these credentials are actually the same credentials that you have for the school. So if you were to sign in and try and look at your grades or look at your what you're enrolled in or your assignments, that is the exact same credentials that you'll use to sign into this network. For the personal one, that basically is saying you're going to be using a pre-shared key or a password in order to enter that. Authentication modes. So, looking at it here, there's different types of authentication modes. So we have WEP. We actually also have open on this one, which is extremely risky. That just means someone can join. WPE is also very risky because it uses that stream cipher that we'll be talking about down the line. Then we have WPA, which is not extremely bad. I'd say it's in the middle right now. And then we have WPA2, AES, and TKIP. So basically these are talking about the encryption methods. These are the main things that we're looking at right now. We'll go on to these encryption methods later on. So what's the main difference? Well, WPA2, just like everything else, every number that goes up in technology field, meaning that it's gaining more methods, more encryptions, more ways to keep it safe. So as of right now, WPA2-PSK AES encryption is actually the standard. Now here it's showing recommended for WPA-WPA2 PSK TKIP-AES. What that's really stating is that some devices do not actually support WPA2. So if you're trying to connect on an older device, it may not even allow you to connect to the internet. So if you have that WPA-WPA2, it'll allow that device to connect. Now, if you actually look on devices such as an iPhone, the new iOS 14 has, if you try to join a Wi-Fi and if it has something lower than WPA2, it'll actually tell you it has weak security. But from my standpoint and the encryption methods that WPA has, it's not extremely, I wouldn't say it's a risky, I would say it's about medium. They obviously did come out with WPA3. We'll be talking about that more on this next slide. So, encryption methods. So, here we have the WEP, WPA, WPA2, WPA3. We won't talk much about this. This is the newest one. I don't have much information on this. This was created in 2018. As you can see, they have a lot of new things that they're implementing to try and get this encryption most secured. So let's start at the beginning. So the encryption that WEP uses is RC4. Which is that stream cipher I was talking about. A stream cipher means that plain text digits are combined with a pseudo-random cipher digit stream or a key stream. This means that your data is being encrypted with the same key compared to the other encryption methods over here. This indicates that if a hacker gets a hold of your key, then they can actually see the data you are sending in that plain text. Now, that's where WPA came in. They created this in, I believe, 2003 to help the transition from WEP to WPA2, because WPA2 came out in 2004, but WPA came with this TKIP, and that TKIP had a two-phase key mixing process, which kind of helped secure that data way more, and also had a four-way handshake. That four-way handshake also helps keep our keys in line and make sure that the people that are on the network are the correct ones and that they know what the PTK, PMK, all that kind of stuff. Well, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you can leave them below in the YouTube video, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.